Welcome. I'm Deborah Dirksen, and this is A Bridge to Spirit. Okay, there you go. Welcome everybody to episode 3 now. I think I'm going to have to stop saying that after a while because I'll lose track. Episode 3 of A Bridge to Spirit. And I am super excited to introduce you to my sister from another mister, Dawn. Who is way down there in Pennsylvania. I say down there because it's below me and completely the other side of the continent. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Deborah. I'm so excited
to
be
excited.
here. I'm nervous, but I listened to your podcast on perfection, so I'm just gonna push through anyway.
Yeah, you have to wing it. Like even today, I was like, oh my God, I'm wearing a blue shirt with a collar, and now my hair is up because it's so hot in this box, and maybe I shouldn't do it today. And I went, Deborah, never mind. Nobody cares, right?
That's right.
Nobody cares. So, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. And also too, you sent me a message saying there was some things that came up that you wanted to talk about too. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
Yes.
But let me say first so that we can tell everyone how we came to meet each other. So Charlie Goldsmith, well, you probably should say more about Charlie Goldsmith because I think you followed him longer. Charlie Goldsmith is a healer, I think Australia. Yes?
Yes. He had a TLC show here in the States. I don't know if you have TLC, but he had a 6 episode series. I happened to find it on the TV one day where he was doing healings and told his story about the power just sort of happened. I want to say he was like 18 at a wedding reception and all of a sudden his hands lit up. And so he's healing people with his pain. And so I watched that series and then it was over. And then I ended up following him on Facebook and, he practices on people and he was doing all these healings. And I realized that I could join one of his healings while he was in Australia. And I was here and I could totally feel my body radiate and light up. The first one I had done was on a Christmas Eve. And I'm just fascinated by him and that energy. It's always something I've been curious about. So
I think there were doctors and stuff that looked into it. Like he does work in hospitals and things. Like, so I think there were even doctors and things that have, followed him. Anyway, Charlie Goldsmith, look him up if you want to find out more. But anyway, Dawn had posted something. Obviously, I don't know what the original post was.
I remember.
I don't message people a private message if I don't know them. And of all the thousands of people made comments, Dawn made a comment that obviously just resonated with me. And Dawn, I went back and found our very first comment from, by the way, 2020. Mm-hmm. It was the 30th of October, 2020. So it was a long time ago. It says, your post on Charlie Goldsmith's page led to my friend request. So obviously I sent you a friend request. Your comment about the light of our spirits making you weep. I feel the same. Blessings to you. And your reply was, heart, I know there are more of us who are compassionate and patient and less judgmental and unconditional in our approach to relationships. But the noisemakers who are so convinced of sabotage and conspiracy feel so prevalent that I couldn't be quiet for the love. And then that's where our chat started 3 years ago.
You don't send friend requests to people you don't know. I don't open, read, or respond to friend requests. I had never did it prior to that, and I have never done it since. So yeah, it was just.
But now we kind of know why, don't we? Because it set off this it was, I have felt this kind of like in the first few months of our connecting was just like, oh my God, I've re-met her. Like I found another person on the planet that I know I've known before.
Yes. And it's, I think the first tangible gift that my father gave me after he passed, because I believe that he orchestrated that. He's the one who got that comment to be visible for you, that, because obviously the comment was something you would have resonated with, but to get it out of thousands to your eyes, I believe that he was a part of that.
Yeah. So, and of course, then fast forward, it's really just been 3 years of like readings and groups and connection, and Dawn expanding her abilities and her skills at, tapping into spirit. And then, of course, sharing. We have very different backgrounds. You come from, is it a Catholic background?
My father's upbringing was Roman Catholic, correct? So I've been through the
But you were also raised in a church yourself,
That's
weren't
correct.
you?
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
me coming from none of that background at all. And so it's just really been wonderful to explore and feel like the love that you have, and how I find how excited you get about spirit. It's kind of like an external representation of how excited I feel about spirit. So that's just why I wanted people to meet you, and I thought we could have a really good chat about things.
Yes, I think so too. I feel like this could be the longest podcast in history, maybe. I feel like we could talk for 37 days straight and not run out of topics, but yeah, so I'll try to be good.
Well, what was really interesting is that, and of course, no limits, you know what I mean? Just
Mhm.
whatever comes, and whatever you want to share.
Okay.
There were a few things that kind of like converged on this night, and I just found 5 minutes before we went to the podcast, I just found our original chat that I just read there. But what's so amazing about it is the piece that I had prepared to talk about actually is the reflection of the words that you wrote back. And so, how this all kind of came to be is that I had a client this afternoon, and it was a really interesting session because it was really slow. And in the beginning, there was a lot of, she was saying, no, I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure. And then, of course, we get about 15-20 minutes in, and all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, that's their name. Oh my gosh, that's their name. And then it all just kind of converged and came together. But one of the main sort of messages from the reading was about spirit encouraging her to not be held back, and to explore the reasons why the psychological kind of roadblocks are in the way to her moving forward. And spirit followed that up by saying that to not fear the ego. And so a lot of people do fear the ego, that to say I'm a beautiful light of spirit, to say that I love my voice, or I love the way that I look, or look how pretty my hair is, or to say wow, I really am such a like a strong speaker, I can feel that in my being, or any number of things that might be not only self complimentary, but where you take on and embody that thing that is so natural to you, and you just unapologetically are that in the world. So many of us recoil from that because of the fear of ego. And so I said to her, but the thing is that quite the opposite is true. People who are bragging are actually coming from a place of insecurity. But when you're aligned to who you are, and that light is radiating out from you, and you have deep self-love and a true sense of appreciation for not only your strengths, but also your weaknesses, that you're taking in yourself as a whole person, but you're charged and excited about what your natural abilities are, that's a very humbled place. And it's a really wonderful place. And so I was encouraging this. I get to the end of the session, and spirit had me lean over and grab for this card deck, this Guanyin card deck. And I pulled card number 16, and I want you just to hear these words in here, because it was such a direct follow up to what spirit had said to her, and then what I had followed up with. Um, it's talking about, in order to grow spiritually, there are times when we simply must delve within and find our shadow. It's easier to perceive the effect of the shadow than the shadow itself. The effect of the shadow is judgment, positive or negative. You talked about that in your message to me. The effect of the shadow is judgment, positive or negative, of another that we do not think is related to us personally. We We may mightily admire or despise characteristics or traits in another, and yet when such judgments arise, it is a part of us that is seeking to be integrated or expressed, trying to get our attention through our judgment. Noticing our judgments of others is the quickest way to get in touch with the shadow self, trying to grow and heal into our conscious awareness so that we can become more whole, empowered, and divinely delicious as we were always meant to be. This is especially so if you've pulled the Veil of Shadows card as well as this particular card. But here it is. Your judgment might be a strong reaction to a person who seems to be self-centered and self-obsessed. The shadow in the self trying to communicate with you through this judgment might be part of your own consciousness that wishes to be more supportive of the self. It will no longer allow you to put yourself behind others, but instead encourage you to express yourself and take up your space with presence. Admiring a great talent in another with a strong reaction or judgment, positive or negative, might be a part of your own psyche wishing to grow and express itself with similar confidence and freedom to do so. Isn't that incredible? Such better words in that card than what I had given to her, but it was the same idea, the same theme. So I guided this woman to tap into her body and connect to the place and space where that was being held back in her. And she found it in her chest, and she found it, there was a lot of description to it. But anyway, I said, there's a word over it. What is the word over it? And she said, well, I don't understand this. The word is create. I can't remember if she said create or creation. And I said, of course, because that is the essence of our soul. The essence of our very spirit is to be here on this planet and create through the human being. And so I go inside the house after the session is over, and I've got like 100 card decks, right? So I was preparing to come in with you, and I grabbed this deck, Sacred Visions Oracle card, which I love, but I was like, out of all the decks, I randomly pulled it. I opened up the deck and I shuffled it, and I said, tell me to talk about something with Dawn. Is there an extra inspiration? And look what came out. Create.
Oh my goodness.
That's exactly.
Like everything's standing up and like, right?
So then I knew when that card came up that I had to tell you the rest. So actually the creation card is why I'm telling you this entire story, to say that as we start off our talk tonight, this very thing that you wrote me about judgments, right? I know there are more of us who are compassionate and patient and less judgmental and unconditional in our approach to relationships. Well, one of those relationships is ourself, right? Is ourself. And when we're judgmental, can we look at that and go, what in me is screaming here? What in me that's making this judgment, right? So like, can we get to loving our authentic being and feel like we can celebrate who we are upon the earth? I believe it starts with, like the card says, getting comfortable with our shadow. I am always one for going, I have egotistical thoughts. I am selfish and self-centered. I go from 0 to 60 and then calm back down. Like, I know where I'm frightened, where I'm judgmental. Do you know what I mean? Myself, getting to know the not so good parts of us, or the struggled parts of us. I think loving and accepting that can get us to loving and accepting also to the really beautiful, radiant parts of who we are. So there you go, Dawn. What do you think? I know I'm just throwing it on you, but.
So obviously there's a lot of things that take you from little girl to now this 47-year-old woman that I am, and everything in between. And so if I think about who I was as a child, and who my mother described to me as a child, that I was inquisitive and was doing puzzles, and I was just nice and playful and kind and all of those things. Like, and again, trying not to be I feel like unconditional love was the thing. But as I grew, when I shared good grades or healthy relationships or fun things, it often was met with, you're bragging, you're pushing your chest out, you're doing all these things. And I was just walking around loving life and loving all the things in it. And so I remember that recoil very well, in the middle school, high school time. And so it's funny, I can always celebrate someone else, I can always give encouragement, but for me it was never there, because I never want to look like a braggy, showy thing. But at the same time, all the psychological reasons, I'm also a gold star seeker, right? So I bought myself gold shiny stars and hearts because I wasn't getting it from the owner of my company, that I worked for or whatever. And so I was always looking somewhere else to get the accolades. But then if somebody did give me accolades, I certainly didn't want to hear it. And I would start to sabotage all the things. So it's fascinating. Like, I'm fascinated in general. But I think part of my lesson, part of my awakening, is to accept the beautiful parts. And now being 47, I'm not embarrassed to say that I love spirit and that all these beautiful things are happening to me, and that I'm having these achievements, and I'm ready to take it to the next level with creation and writing and sharing things like this. And so, yeah, I think it's perfect
Well,
timing.
and also too, I think that that's the key part. So what is the difference between me not being able to celebrate myself before, me not being able to own or speak about what my strengths are before, and my ability to be able to do that now is literally spirit. And I say that not just because of some external source that I have faith in that helps me to do that. It's the deep exploration and the experience after experience of feeling myself step outside my body and expand into that radiant energy, that loving, compassionate, connected, peaceful, joyful energy that is my spirit, that is separate from the human that is Deborah in a way, because it's eternal,
Mhm.
and the Deborah is just a temporary, momentary experience in the expansion of time, but I
Mhm.
get to be this for a short period of time. I feel like it's the exploration of my own soul, of my own spirit, and the connection to divine and that has not given me permission, but has woken me up in a sense to the fact that that's just true. Every single one of us are these remarkable beings who
Mhm.
stepped into the human meat suit, and are having experiences that are challenging and fill the mind with negativity and judgment and all of that. And so I feel like in some ways I'm working myself backwards. Do you know what I mean? From birth to just now, this open exploration. So I think if there was anything I would say to people, is that the deeper you explore your spiritual being, the essence, the vibration of who you are, I think the easier it will be to love and accept the gifts that you do have as a person upon the earth, along with the things that we already judge and would like to change.
Yeah, because I know I had a knowing of all these things, being raised a Catholic, like going into the catechisms and the churches and listening to sermons. And I always felt off. Like, I always felt this disconnect, because I would see Jesus and be like, boy, do I want to know him. And I would see Mary and, oh, I certainly want to know her. But as I'm chanting in prayer that I'm not worthy to receive, and everything is sort of about sin, and cohabitating with my husband before marriage. So everything was about, I'm doing all the wrong things. And so you question what you're doing, and how can I be connected to spirit, or it must just be when I get to heaven. But I knew that wasn't true. I just didn't know what to replace it with. So if I would read a new age book, or I would read a book about spirit or attraction or whatever the things, there would be these little pinpoints where I would be like, oh, I know that to be true. I just felt like it was always going against what I was taught. And so it took me a long time to be like, I don't have to be the Pope or a bishop or somebody to work like worthy to receive Jesus. Like, he absolutely loves me, not just the pure innocent girl going through catechism before she sinned, but me, and like wants to know all the things. And it means different things to different people, but it's still that love, that unconditional, beautiful love in all these different forms that help me get through the day. And so, yeah, like I just want everyone, we were actually talking about that at work today. I just want everyone to feel that supported. If you're not getting it from home, and you're not getting it from your partner, and you're not getting it from your kids, whatever it is, like that there's just so much support in all things orchestrating. And if you really stop and watch all the things, I'm in goosebumps and tears all the time, all the live long day.
It's so great. And it's so great that you talk about Jesus too, because literally in the last group, Divine Self group, that I did, were you in it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I was talking to somebody afterwards, because people know me. I do not bring up Jesus. So have I seen Jesus? Yes, I have. Do I pray to Jesus? No, I don't. Jesus is not the energy, but he's also not that. So Jesus is one of the loving, energetic beings that I experienced since the beginning of my mediumship 15 years ago. And I learned very early on to let go of my judgments, especially around the one they called Jesus, because I had very much negative connotations. Do you know what I mean? From the past related to that term. I know many other people that do too, but I'm so open spiritually that I will not go on in this show, but I will go on in a show about Mother Mary, which I've had profound experiences with multiple times. Zero Catholics in my family, no religious upbringing, but ever since mediumship happened to me, I have seen deities and energies of all different faiths, and all different sort of cultural sort of expressions. I've been very blessed to have that non sort of bias thing, but I have been biased against Jesus until the day that I was downstairs and in a meditation. I don't know if I ever told you this, Dawn, but so Jesus all of a sudden was standing in front of me, and I was like, oh no, that's not Jesus. And I tried to brush it out of my mind. And again, I closed my eyes, I settled down, there, Jesus again. And I'm like, no, it can't be Jesus. Like, Jesus isn't standing here talking to me. And I brush it aside. And then all of a sudden, I see this figure in front of me with this Egyptian kind of looking hat and all this kind of intricacy. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm paying attention to what I'm seeing. And then I hear Osiris, and I'm like, Osiris. I have not heard that before. And so a lot of things I would hear in meditation, I would have to do a Google search after. So of course, Osiris somehow was acceptable to me, this Egyptian deity. And so I finished the meditation, and I go to Google, and I Google this Osiris, and up comes this image, two paintings. One half of the face is Osiris, the other half is Jesus. I cried and laughed so hard, because I guess Osiris is comparable to, or is another, do you know what I mean? It's like two faces of the same being. And I just sat there feeling like such a fool. And I'm just in my mind, I'm going, Jesus, I'm so sorry. I can imagine how frustrating this is for you. Here I am, Deborah. Nope. Here I am, Deborah. No. Okay, well, then try this. And of all the images of Osiris that could come up, this one comes up. And I thought, Deborah, let go of your judgments. You know nothing. Just let them come to you. And that was just opening for me. Not opening in the way that Jesus became the one that I connected to. However, I do not mistake when Jesus is in the room. And when Jesus is in the room specifically, I now will not hesitate to say, like the Divine Self group, which is, by the way, a class that I run, where we experience all kinds of ways to evolve and grow our sensing and feeling. Anyway, in the last session, 3 beings were there, Jesus standing right in front. And I tell you, it catches in my throat, Dawn. And I go, oh, there's a whole group of people. I don't want to say Jesus. Deborah, it's none of your business. Just say who's here. And you know, in saying who was there, I had people contact me afterwards to say, I am not connected to Jesus. It's not a thing. But this very week, I heard that name. This very week, he came in my meditation. This very week, like, profound. So now, thank you, Jesus. I don't miss saying that he's present, you know, along with all the other loving energies.
Yeah, because I feel like I want to be sort of his advocate and his PR director, because he's sort of this untouchable, you know, and you know, a lot of focus is on his crucifixion instead of just his beautiful love and light all the time. And it's focused on the sin for me and all of those, you know, sort of controlling things that went against that little girl. Like even as a young girl, it just never felt quite right. So he was always this untouchable, this, you know, just out of just, I guess, levels ahead of us, you know, and better than us. And that's just not the case. So he's very present in my
so altered by man.
yeah.
So many of these energies, so many of these deities, so many of these beautiful blessings that have come in spiritual form for us on the earth walk, in many cultures have been distorted by the very cultures themselves. And so so I feel lucky in that I get this very authentic, real. The very first time Ganesh, this deity who is known as the remover of obstacles, I was sitting in a Reiki training session. So Reiki is a form of energy healing. And I'm sitting in this session learning Reiki, and I have my hands out like this, and all of a sudden this elephant with all these arms appears in my hands. And I was like, what on earth am I seeing? Like, you have to understand, I explored nothing. So all of these things since the beginning of, you know, that sudden mediumship at 36 or 38, whatever age it was, they were all new to me. Like, I didn't read books. I didn't explore theology or religions. I wasn't a traveler. The farthest I've been is Saskatchewan, for heaven's sakes, you know. I'm not a world person. So when energy is like, you know, so there I am Googling elephant with many arms, you know, up comes Ganesh. And so it's just been a beautiful unveiling. So I think, you know, part of losing our judgments or letting go of judgments allows this world of spirit in, this world of, like you said, compassion and love in, that maybe, just maybe in hopes, we can find it within ourselves, that we can see that we are, in fact, that energy, that vibration, that thing that shines through your face all the
Yeah.
time.
And I have to tie it into my dad. I have to give him the credit. So he was that devout Catholic, and, you know, he left our family early on, no divorce, because that wasn't allowed in Catholicism. And admittedly, he was very self-centered. He was very materialistic. He was a drinker. You know, I think he had a midlife crisis of sorts and so on. And he would continue to go to church, never make amends, never do those things. And I feel like I tried to forgive him, and I realized, like, I love being married and I love having children, and I was meant to be this mother, but it's very hard. And so to have him conform in whatever way as I got older and had children, I was like, you know, Dad, like, it's really hard, and sort of like, I forgive you. And he thanked me. There was no talk. There was never any amends, never anything. And as he got older, I would entertain the lunch, the dinner, I would sit and talk, you know, whatever. And religion would ultimately come up, and I would tell him that God loved him no matter what, that Jesus loved him no matter what, and that when he lives, you know, like, leaves this body, you'll know the full fruition. And he would, I'm convinced, like, he was like, we'll see, Dawn. He would say things like that. Like, I love you, Dawn. I think you're intelligent, but we'll see. And when we were at his service in this Catholic church I had never been in, the priest is crying because he's missing this David, you know, and he's the member of the Bible class and the men's Bible group, and he's participating. And I knew in that moment that he was doing those things to stay out of purgatory. He knew that he had done all of these things and he was preparing for purgatory. So instead of just basking in this beautiful life that he gave us and his children and all of these things, he was trying to do the thing to keep him from this, desolate place. And
You mean
now,
because he wasn't really in touch with it
that's correct,
authentically?
because he was doing what was taught and what
Right.
he was, because it was a series of steps and sacraments, and if I don't get divorced, I haven't sinned. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe making amends to Jesus in a room or with a priest and tavern. I don't know the words, the lingo, but instead of the actual human experience. And now I've been able to experience him free in spirit, and so the will see, for sure. And that's how I know he brought us together, because he's like, oh, Dawn might have been on to something, the child kind of being the teacher in that way, because I just know, I just know that he's okay. And
did your dad come through then when we first started connecting?
Yeah, right. He was the first one. You said, whose heart stopped like this? Well, and it was like the first spirit out of the gate in my very first reading in the first second.
Wow.
And Dad, yeah. Yeah, because I remember the day he died, my mother was already in a nursing home for mini strokes and balance, and she had lost her emotion and things like that. And I was mourning her, even though she was alive. And I got the call that my dad died, and his heart just stopped, like you had said, in recovery from a surgery. And I literally prayed to him, and I said, this would have been September 17th of 2020. I said, help me in life, Daddy, the way you couldn't, in heaven, help me in heaven, like you couldn't help me when you were here. And then a month
later,
you sent me a message. Yeah. And so I knew that it was him and Jesus because of Charles coming to visit before my dad died. So yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really beautiful, Dawn.
Yeah.
I think you said you wanted to share something.
Yeah, so we're gonna go. So Charles is the other part. So that was the
Good.
bird that came, right? So we'll start there, and then I'll tell you what happened in group last night.
I love it.
So it was actually before my father died. My husband brought attention to a white, like, bird. People call them pigeons around here, but it was like a dove, white dove outside. And he was hanging around, and I was like, oh, he's here for me. And it's the first time I ever said anything sort of weird like that, but I was like, this bird is here for me. The next day, still here. The next day, still here. It was like around the 1st of September. And all of a sudden, I'm looking outside my window at night, and this dove is sitting in the rain gutter outside of my window asleep. The next night, it's pouring down rain at night, and this dove is outside. And every time we go outside, he'll just go up a level on our roof, but he would not leave. And I said to my husband, oh my God, I'm dying. Like, I was convinced that he was coming for me. My mom used to watch that show, Touched by an Angel. And I was like, oh my God, the angel of death is upon us and he's taken me, So my mom was away. I was grieving. It was COVID. I was locked away from her. I was mourning her. And then 3 weeks later, it was 2.5 weeks later, I got the call that my dad had passed. And this bird stayed through there until the first frost. And he just, it was just, I have pictures. Like if you use this podcast and you post it, I will post the pictures of Charles.
Oh, I'm using this podcast. Yeah.
And it wasn't until that. So it's like, that was September. Then I met you in October, but I just didn't know you were a medium. I didn't know that you had classes. I didn't know.
It's not why I contacted you. It was like, hey, trying to rook this woman. I authentically was touched by what you said. Yeah. And I didn't contact you from my spirit mediumship page, just from Deborah.
Just from Deborah. Yeah. And so I was sitting here, and I don't take care of myself necessarily with sleep. And I needed a Christmas gift for a friend who had done something very lovely for my family. And I sweater wouldn't cut it. And she had lost her mom. And I was like, what am I going to get her? And we happened to have this conversation in my garage, because we were garage drinking and hanging around for the COVID, Yeah. And I said, I heard about a medium locally. Like, would you ever do that? That might be fun. My dad just died, whatever. She's like, oh, I would totally do that, because she lost her mother to breast cancer way too soon. and she was having trouble being a parent. She loved being a parent, but she had fear always. And so I was like, oh, this would be like a good thing. And it was a couple nights later, and I'm laying insomnia, like floating through Facebook, and there's this Deborah with a buy one get one mediumship reading, and I was like, huh, like I could get one for me and one for her. It answers my gift. It was a Christmas Eve special. It's the night before Christmas, and I still hadn't gotten anything for her, so I bought it, and you sent me a thing, and I printed it off and wrapped it up. I didn't do anything with mine. She immediately made her reading, and it was for February 11th. And so she has her reading. I come home that day. She's sobbing. I spoke with my mother today through Deborah, like, da, 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 da. And so I was like, I have to, I made small group readings. I already was making group readings before I had my own. And then I met my dad that first second with you. And that's been it. At 3 years of, I would have never thought to take classes, but my soul just knew what it needed. You know, I wasn't going to get there necessarily living the same life. I kept talking about the hamster wheel and going to work and taking care of the children, and just reading something inspirational every once in a while wasn't going to do it. I had to start practicing and experiencing and opening up my circle.
And it's
yeah,
not training in mediumship. It's like literally it's the divine
no,
self, because it literally was about, no, we all need to wake up to the fact that we have this sixth sense, this being that is who we are, and how can we find all kinds of creative ways to access the divinity of that, the connection to that, the awareness of that, and beyond that, then also to the beings that we are connected to, the loved ones that are so much a part of our life. Like,
mhm.
it's crazy. Like, my girlfriend's grandmother, one day we're sitting on the couch, and now my girlfriend, I'd known her, I think at that point for like probably 12 years at least then. And all of a sudden her grandmother's there. Now, I've never connected to her grandmother before, but her grandmother's there, and she's showing me a headstone. And I'm like, does your grandmother showing me like a headstone, but I don't understand why? And she says, because my mom right now is having her headstone sandblasted. Her grandmother had died like 40 years before, but she'd never had a headstone. So the mother was doing the headstone for her own mother, literally that like 3 days, right? They'd been planning it. The next day it was going to be sandblasted because they had cut out the whatever you call it, the stencil for it.
Mhm.
The grandmother says the death date's wrong. She shows me the headstone and she blurs out the second date, and she gives me the feeling of wrong. And I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you, but the death date is wrong. She's like, Deborah, no, it's not. Like these people, they know their stuff. They're editors, she's like, no, it's not. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you, because this is what she's showing me. So anyway, she phones her mom and says, Deborah's saying blah, 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 the death date is wrong. Her mom's going, no, it's not. It's not wrong. It's just fine. Well, her mom wakes early in the morning with it's now niggling at her, and she calls the place, see, and sure enough, the death date was wrong. So we're talking about, I don't know, like 30, 40 years. I don't know how long. The grandmother had been passed a long time. And there she is saying, I know that they're doing this for me, but you need to let them know that the death date is wrong. Like, come on, you can't, like, you can't. Like, you
No,
just, what is the comeback to that?
yeah,
So here, we think that they've left us in the physical, which of course, you think about even your mom and dad, it's devastating. We want to hear their voice and connect with them and look them in the eye and have exchanges and, have them participate in all of our life as it goes on. And we don't have them in the physical, but they are still participating.
yeah. And
They're still.
it's just like when my mom died January of 22, then thank goodness I was through these things and I could understand sort of her soul's journey and how I couldn't control it and I couldn't make it better. And, you know, you go through all of these things. And she was immediately in my room, free of her body. Like I was with her when she passed. So that was my first experience with that. And I started to name off of her loved ones. And I basically saw her just in all, you know, go to them. It was so beautiful. And then I could see her bouncing around my room, but the grief was so deep and I would like let go of my breath. And it's like I wasn't breathing, but when I wasn't, she was so close. It was so palpable. And I was like, and I'm in my head sort of talking to her like, you are so happy to be free. And she was impressing upon me that freedom. And so while I'm grieving, it's not about her being there. It's just about me craving her here. And when I was writing her tribute, I'm going through all the papers and I knew that she was with my dad, even though they weren't together. He was the love of her life. And, you know, I found this picture, oddly enough, of just my father's hand as a younger man when I would have been a little girl, and his wedding ring's on, his watch, so it would have been his left hand's watch, his wedding ring, and there's a butterfly on it. There's a series of pictures. So back in the 80s, you wouldn't have had a cell phone. So he's literally taking stills of this butterfly on him. But it was his hand before he left us. It was his hand of strength. And I held it to my face and I cried for my parents in the dark at 11 o'clock at night. And I next day you were checking in on me and I was like, you know, I want to Sylvia Plathid. I'm ready to walk into the water to just be with him. Like, you know, irrational, rational, whatever it is, that was my truth. And you were like, hey, do you want to talk later? And I was like, of course. And then you messaged me like 10 minutes later, like, I'm getting stood up for an appointment. Like, people don't miss appointments with me, but my appointment didn't show. Do you want to talk now? And you know, my mother mixed up this woman's date and you ended up reading her, whatever, but she wanted to let me know that she was okay. And you were like, I know these things are great, but what is it that you can tell Dawn that only she will understand? And they both collectively were saying, we will send her butterflies. And I knew that it was because of that butterfly fold, you know, picture that I held to my face. You couldn't have known that. You couldn't have known that just, you know, 18 hours prior, I was with a photo of a butterfly and my parents and thinking of them together. So they let you know, and they let me know with you, they let me know without you. And it's just, the world is a better place, you know. It's not a requirement, but
and so you know, that's the thing. And you just said something really important there. Like you know, you'll hear from them through me, but you'll also hear from them not through me. I want to hear a little bit about the not through me, because you have, you know, expanded and grown and developed like your listening. Do you know what I mean? The way that you receive spirit. And I think maybe there's something you have to say about that.
yeah. So my mother died in room 33. And like from the very first day, we decided to go to hibachi that night. And my husband thought I was crazy, or the next night after she passed, the Saturday. And I was like, I just have to get out of here. Like, I'm just feeling so sad, but I had just heard from her. And I was like, and we were at a stoplight and all three cars on either side of us had a 33 in the license plate. And so I knew right away. So 33s are the number for her. And my father died on September 17th. So I get 917 and 33 more times than I can count. And it's not just that I see it, it's that then I feel it. My whole body just warms and they're just always there. So I just had, you know, a medical scare and I'm almost through it, but I've had some very frightening tests and some scary words and, you know, doctors that you don't want to go see. And they immediately sent me for tests and I was completely overwhelmed because it was all same day and I wasn't planned. And I sat down at the check-in desk for radiology and I was like, feeling nervous. And if I talk to them, they answer. It's weird. So I look to my left, there's a penny on the floor. And I was like, oh, somebody's with me for sure. And I go through my medical test. I leave the hospital. I'm going back to work. I get blocked from my way in to my development, I have to go up and around a different way. So I'm driving away, a cardinal swoops right in front of my car. And I was like, okay, that could be something. I pull up to a stop sign, and a monarch butterfly starts dancing in front of my car. I had to wait at the stop, and I pull into a parking space. I'm on a work call, mind you, because I'm always doing 50,000 things, but I made, so I'm like penny, cardinal, monarch, butterfly within 28 minutes of each other. And I was like, you know what? I'm going for a Starbucks. Haven't been to Starbucks in 3 months. I leave my work. I go out the entrance that was blocked just a minute and a half ago. It's wide open. So I can go. So, because I had to go that way. Do you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
get the burger.
Yeah.
Go to Starbucks. And since my mother passed, she had a very old Hyundai accent, and the paint coating was peeling. And my husband's always like, I can't believe we haven't seen the Hyundai accent, you know? I pull into Starbucks, and there's a very red car, her candy apple red color, not a Hyundai accent, but right next to it was a black Hyundai accent, her year, with all the paint clear coat peeled all off the hood, all off the top. And I'm like, why would I go to Starbucks at this random time when I'm already late for work? The cardinal, the butterfly, the penny, the car. She's and I saw probably 33 like 100 times. Like, she was with me through my testing, like she would have been if she was here. Like, even today when I had a CT scan, like, I had my stuff on the chair next to me. I moved it onto the floor so that she could sit by me. I had to make sure that there was room for her, because I knew that she would. I knew that she would just,
That.
yeah. So
And she's so proud of you, Dawn. She's so proud of you. You know this when I like sometimes when all of a sudden I have a really hard time seeing, like I get everything looks clear to me, and then all of a sudden it feels like my eyes are pulling or distorting, and then everything goes blurry. That's been happening for like 5 minutes now, and I'm like, no, I'm not. We're not doing that right now. Just back away, Mom. But she just keeps going. Tell her I'm proud. Tell her I'm proud. She's very proud that you're having this chat here, kind of
yeah,
stepping out and sharing with people.
yeah, because I'm honored, and it's just like I'm so honored that you asked me to do it, and I'm also just so in love with this stuff that, like, I feel that I feel comfortable. If I could get over what I look like and all the other things, like, I feel very comfortable talking about these things. So,
Well, this is a lesson in the getting over all the other
yeah,
things, because
yeah,
really honestly, people don't want cookie cutter. Do you know what I mean? They just want us to show up as ourselves. And because really everybody else is the same way. And if we stop pretending like everything is perfect and cookie cutter, right?
mhm,
And then we can all just relax a little bit and go, I'll
yeah.
never forget when I can't remember if it was an article or a quote or something I wrote where it said, the Dalai Lama farts too. Right?
In
Like,
some ways, I embarrass my children all the time because now I'm a little less, perfect, a little less worried about what
yeah,
everybody, and so that takes us to yesterday. So
good.
another, I'm sitting at my desk. So okay, so I'll preamble this. I yeah, on a Tuesday night, I meet with other gals who were in your classes, and we meet to practice and talk about how spiritism, interrupted us, and, how we practice, what we're avoiding, the pitfalls, the worries, the inner saboteur, all the things that we talk about. And we practice on each other. And now we've sort of practiced on each other, that everybody sort of knows my dad and knows my mom, and we know Britt's grandma, and, all the things.
Yeah.
And so we've invited some sitters now twice. You were a sitter in our group
Yes.
once. So we've had two other sitters, and last night we had a sitter. So with all of my medical
A
stuff,
sitter
and
is a sitter
oh yeah,
is a person that comes to sit and be read, to have a reading, to have the people tune in for them.
so we're practicing, and we basically say it's rough and it's bumpy, and we're doing the best that we can, but we're doing it all in love, and we hope that there's something here for you, and we hope that who you're expecting to hear from, like, will say hello, and we can all practice and love together. So I was like in my own heap of crap yesterday, and I love Tuesdays and all divine groups, but I was like, I don't know if I could do it, like, I was fretting all day. I'm like, I have these doctor's appointments and these things, and I have to drink this liquid, and I have to watch when I'm fasting, and I'm just so scared that is it fair to the person who's there if I can't get anything, right? I'm always the first to just doubt that I'm going to get a darn thing. So I'm sitting at work. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I randomly get up, Deborah, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. I need a sandwich. And I go to a place I never go, grab a sandwich, come up a road that I never go this way ever. And I was like, oh, I'm 4 miles to empty. Oh, I'm 2 miles to empty. And where I would have normally got gas in that emergent situation, it said, please refuel. So I pull into a new gas station that still had like cellophane over its logo, and I was like, okay, there's 2 cars there. I can go in and get gas before I break down on the road because my air's blasting. My husband would have a fit. Okay. So I pull into the gas and I'm pumped and I get back in my car and I look over and there's a work vehicle with the word Evergreen on it. And I was like, okay. For whatever reason, the word stuck out of my head and I turn right and there's a strip mall on the other side of the street. One of the shops, the name is Evergreen. And I was like, like, I'm going to make a little mental note of this because it seems significant. Maybe I'll need something in healing with the plant energy, Evergreen, whatever it is. And then I forget about it. I go to work, totally forget, get busy. We had a movie date with the kiddos because I'm trying to keep myself busy this week. Come home. It's approaching, the time. I know the girls are already probably meditating, inviting the sitter in. And I started to get that anxious feeling here. And I was like, okay, you know what? Spirit's here. I don't know what they're going to bring, but I have to go. Like, I know this feeling. So I get on, they're already reading her. I had already missed the meditation. So I kept my mic off. I kept my camera off and I listened to my meditation. And sometimes that involves doodling. So I got a bunch of messages. It was the sitter's name, Lansbury, which I thought it was Angela Lansbury I was writing. And I was like, oh, wait, it's a writer, a mystery. And I write typewriter, whatever, but I start doodling with my eyes closed. So I get through the meditation. I open up, I get on, the mic, I show my camera. It's my turn after a couple minutes. And I said, hello, I'm Dawn. I'm sorry that I'm late, but I owe it to you to tell you these things as they're happening. So what I drew, I opened my eyes, I looked down, it's an evergreen tree. And I wrote the word evergreen and I was like, I don't know what evergreen would mean to you, but I've gotten it 3 times today and I never get up from my desk in the middle of the day. Never. And so it must mean something. And she said, I was very nervous and hesitant and sort of skeptical about coming, very anxious. The person who introduced me to this group was kind of helping me see that spirit's involved in all things and help. By the way, I'm a writer because I had said about, her name, Lansbury, like pretending it was like the murder she wrote. And I said, I didn't know if it was mystery or you were a writer, but I heard both. And she's like, yes, I'm a writer. And one of the things that I wrote, had some mystery and thriller, and I was like, okay, so I can trust what I'm getting, even though I feel like a loon when it's happening. Yeah. And she said, in preparing for the reading tonight, for the first time, like I sat out in between 2 evergreen trees. And that's where I had my moment. And I said, so you just had that, say 2 hours ago, 7 hours ago, I got evergreen. Like they know where you were going to be before you were going to be there and all the things. Then one of the other gals, we pick a card for that sitter and it's this beautiful angelic person. Flip it over. There are 2 evergreen trees on the side of the card. And I was like, does anyone see the evergreen trees? Like, I can't with this, right? So I'm in Pennsylvania. People are in Toronto, different times of the day, different folks, different beliefs. And it's all orchestrating perfectly if you just ask and then listen. And it's absolutely insane. So then I'll go one step further. So then another gal said, oh, I have a little bit more. I think I may be with your grandpa because I'm getting a male energy here. I look over and see my college degree is sitting on my desk and I've looked at it a million times. I didn't see the cross at the top. And my eyes were solely focused on the cross. And so I wrote the cross on the paper and I was curious if this grandma energy that we were with was religious, but I was afraid to ask. I'm still like, do I ask? So I hear this other gal go, I'm going to ask him what this male energy, what he did for a living. Was your grandfather in a trade? And I wrote carpenter down and my right foot felt like a hot searing pain through my foot. And I was like, oh, and then this gal was like, "Ugh, was he a carpenter? Like my hand hurt so bad." And she said carpenter, and I put on my mic and I was like, I got carpenter. I showed him the page, that I wrote it before she said it. I was like, and my right foot hurts. And all of a sudden, this girl's like, well, could it be Jesus? Because I was talking with my gal friend, and could Jesus even come tonight? And I knew. I absolutely knew he was giving me the foot pain, giving the other gal the hand pain, said carpenter at the same time, right after I wrote across. And this other grandmother, the one she actually wasn't as close with, did have a religious upbringing. And so I said, even though you weren't close, she's trying to be here as you're writing, as you're expressing that creativity and you're afraid. She had this piece of art on the wall, and I had never been drawn to anything in someone's room. And here it wasn't art. It was a photograph of an empty stadium, but with colored seats. And it was empty, and it was tying in with another gal's message about if you just keep creating, that audience will fill itself. And we all got this significance. And so I said, this grandma, you may not have been close, but your ancestors are with you, not just spirits, not just angels, but your ancestors, the strengths that maybe she had that you didn't have, like that you can use that all as a source of strength. And it turned out to be a really powerful exchange in confidence and then I said, oh, Deborah had a class on the inner saboteur. And like, so I'm going to email them all the exercise, because all these women, all these different ages, all these different backgrounds, educations, religion, no religion, we all have that voice in there, and spirit's there to hold us all up even when we can't. And
And
Jesus is a
and that story that you just told, especially that last part, really brings this kind of podcast full circle. When you said that that the stands were empty, but it's like if you just keep in the mode of creation, the audience will come. And really this does cycle back to the beginning to say that it is not your business who you're for. Your
Mhm.
business is just to do and be you, and not make that any more or less valid by the number of people that respond to it.
Mhm.
When you're in the flow of
Mhm.
your spirit, of your being, it will not matter if there's a stadium full, there's one person there, or you're in a room alone. When you're in that flow, you will be fulfilled, and you will be fulfilling your purpose here, which is just to be authentically you. If you're looking for authenticity of spirit, a lot of that you could find back in childhood. You could go back to childhood, and okay, if some childhoods are distressing, that's understandable. For some people that it might be hard, but you could still go back and remember the thing that kind of lit you up. Did you love to write poetry? Did you love the way the movies were, and you were immersed in movies? Did you love the grass and nature, and were you in love with horses? Do you know what I mean? Go back to the place of your childhood. As children, we're so close to the essence of our spirit before things start getting altered and changed, like you talked about earlier, for good, bad, or indifferent. Do you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
alteration and the development of our personality here, by all of the things that occur to us. But when we come in, we're that energy, that essence that has arrived here to be this, to do that thing that is, so unique to us, right? So
Mhm.
even if it's just that you love photography and that photography is for nobody else, the moment that you're looking down that lens and you're making that connection and you're seeing it all right there, and you snap that shot, that moment that lights you up, that moment is for everybody. It doesn't matter what happens to the photo after. That moment is a shared moment for humanity. We're
Mhm.
not separate from each other. So the more you are in the thing that is you, the thing that lights you up, everyone else around you is feeling that, you know?
Wow.
Dawn, thank you for doing this with me,
Thank you for having me.
for coming here to share. And I just really do love your energy, and I love you, and I love your heart. And I'm so glad that we got to meet.
Yes, it was destined. Destiny.
Okay, lots of love to you, and thank you
Thank
everybody
you.
for watching, and look forward to seeing you next time.
And we're going to put those comments in on the Dove, on Charles.
We
Let
are.
us know what you think. Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.